Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another YouTube Live. I'm excited for you to be here. I'm excited for this topic today. And before we get into it, I want to remind you to subscribe to our channel, to hit the notifications button, to leave a comment, to check out our other social media. Hopefully you enjoy today's session. We are going to be talking about, is going vegan healthier? I think many of you have asked themselves, that is going vegan healthier. There was a time maybe 3-4 years ago, maybe more, 4 years ago, when the Game Changers documentary came out on Netflix, and many of my clients asked me, oh, should I go vegan? Is that the right approach? Would that be healthier for me? And we're going to dive into that, and I will let you know my opinion on the Game Changers documentary as well, but just in general on veganism. So first of all, we do need to say that nowadays veganism has kind of become synonymous with plant-based, and they're really not the same thing. So veganism literally means nothing. You're not consuming anything that is of animal origin. You're not even consuming honey. You're not, like, if you're strict vegan, nothing that has to do with animals. And therefore it's obviously also not vegetarian, because vegetarian includes dairy products, which is derived of animals, from cows. It also doesn't include eggs or egg whites. And if we say plant-based, which many people say, it could also just be that you say, hey, 80% of what I eat is plant-based, but I'm still eating animal products. I'm still eating meat. I'm still eating steak. I'm still eating fish, which technically would be pescatarian or whatever. So if someone says plant-based, it doesn't necessarily mean vegan. Vegan, however, always means only from plants, nothing animal, whereas plant-based can also mean you are still including animal products, right? So just to answer that question right away, the big question that I have posed here, is going vegan healthier? The answer is not necessarily. I have known many vegans, many vegetarians that have had a terrible diet, meaning, for instance, in the morning it was a bagel with jam, for lunch it was pasta with a little bit of tomato sauce, in the afternoon they might have a muffin, in the evening they might have had, rice and some vegetables. So not that there's necessarily anything really bad about that particular example, but it could have been also like a vegan pizza for dinner, especially nowadays with all these processed or like fake meats and so on. There are many examples of a quote unquote bad vegan diet. And by bad, what do I mean by that? By bad, I simply mean lacking in certain macronutrients, but also certainly lacking in micronutrients. And what we often hear or become aware of is that sometimes people become deficient in things like iron, like vitamin B12, so like the things with regards to energy. I have often heard that many people, when they go on a vegan diet, that at first, for the first 6 to 8 months, they feel great, because of course, if we eat one thing, we don't eat the other, and so on. So they have probably eliminated a lot of processed animal products in general, like really a lot of cured meats, or just in general saturated fats. And so they might feel lighter, they might not feel as sluggish from processing these these things, I guess. But then it's not until like 6 to 8 months into their vegan diet that actually some of these other deficiencies pop up, like the vitamin B, like the iron, and so on. So I actually think, let me put it that way. We're just going to assume, when talking about vegan going forward, that we're talking about a plant-based vegan person or a vegan diet, meaning one that is actually, in fact, rich in micronutrients and high in quality, so 80-90% whole foods, and not as much quote unquote poorly processed things. Although we will get into the processed section and how that can be a good thing in particular aspects in veganism sometimes. So hypothetically, in comparison to a standard diet, a plant-based vegan diet could potentially contain more micronutrients because we are consuming more plants potentially. It could mean more fiber, which has a lot of links to better blood sugar levels, to better digestion, to better gut health, to even heart health, and so on. Although sometimes when people go vegan, they really overdo it at first, and then their digestive tract can't keep up with that. So I have shared this example before. A few years ago, I was trying to prove that even on a vegan diet, you can hit your protein intake. So I was like, for a few weeks, I'm going to go on a vegan diet and show my clients that that in fact is possible. And so I increased my fiber, not on purpose, but it essentially went from like 25 grams on average to 55 grams from one day to the next. And so I was blocked up, my stomach hurt. Everything was just like, for several days, I could not go to the bathroom because my digestion was not used to it. So if someone switches or increases their fiber in general, but also potentially switches like automatically to a higher fiber diet by going plant-based vegan, I would just issue the note of caution to do that increase slowly and perhaps to transition slowly. I actually wrote an entire blog about how to go vegan or how to be jacked on a vegan diet. Again, you will soon find out that I'm not more pro plant-based vegan than that I'm necessarily omnivore. I am an omnivore at the moment, but I still wanted to give those people that are wanting to be plant-based vegan a bit of instructions. That's why I wrote this blog, and I'm going to put the link into the show notes. But anyway, so we have potential benefits, potentially more micronutrients, potentially more fiber. I do think if someone chooses to go vegan, they should. The best reason, in my opinion, would be for ethical considerations. So for the animal, the love to the animal, not necessarily for an environmental consideration. And that's a whole different topic. I'm not going to get into that because I'm not a specialist in that. But there is a bit of a questionality around, hey, if everybody in the world would be plant-based vegan, would we even have sufficient grains and means to sustain that long term and to provide the sufficient calories and macronutrients to the entire world's population? But anyway, so the main three benefits, in my opinion, could be more micronutrients, more fiber, and it could help with lipid profile and cholesterol. In fact, one of our coaches, Allison, she has been vegetarian for, I think, her entire life, but she tried to go more vegan, plant-based, I guess, for a while to help improve her cholesterol levels. And it did actually, in fact, improve her cholesterol. However, there were some other things which I don't believe were quite as positive in the sense of body composition that she wasn't as happy with. So she actually still includes like a normal vegetarian. She includes egg whites and dairy products and so on. So now let's get to the cons of even a plant-based, so a good vegan diet, a 80-90% whole food vegan diet. So as I mentioned, it can be harder to get your protein. And most of our clients that do follow a vegan diet, they like straight away were like, yeah, we can make that work, no worries. But it's very likely you're going to have to consume at least 2 servings of protein powder per day just to hit that 0.8 to 1 grams per pound of body weight that we do want, especially if someone is in a weight loss phase or if someone is trying to build muscle and so on. Sometimes also, or on a vegan diet, the quality of the protein also becomes sometimes questionable. And while we know that, okay, in one meal you don't necessarily have to have the entire amino acid profile, but over the course of the day, it is important that you are covering them all, that you're covering the entire base. And nowadays, that is pretty easy. You can just, consume an EAA drink with your meals to ensure you're actually consuming your essential amino acids. You can supplement, or most protein powders nowadays as well, like plant-based protein powders, they will have a complete amino acid profile, even if they might not be as rich in leucine or so. But yeah, it's just something to pay a little more attention to than if you are on an omnivorous diet, because you're more likely to cover all your essential amino acids anyway. What also becomes more important or needs more fine tuning on a plant based vegan diet would be meal timing, or particularly also protein timing, frequency, and so the things that don't matter as much on an omnivorous diet, because we're pretty sure we are covering all our bases in terms of amino acids anyway, and protein quantity anyway. They do become a bit more important to pay attention to on a plant-based vegan diet. So why am I mentioning this? Because people like simplicity, and people can adhere to simplicity a lot easier than if everything, like nutrition is hard for most people to begin with, right? And so if we make that even harder, if I now don't just tell you like, hey, okay, I don't really care exactly about the macros, but now you also or for someone on an omnivorous diet, I might just say like, I don't care exactly about whether you hit that particular protein level or not, or about your exact macros. Just hit your calories, just roughly get into your protein range, and everything else doesn't matter that much. Eat something around your training, but apart from that, we'll see that 80-90% of your food consumption is whole foods. Now with a vegan person, I might say, okay, we want to make sure we're going into your workout fueled. We want to make sure we're having an amino acid drink around your meal times as well. We want to make sure we're eating this amount of times. We want to make sure we're covering, we're kind of using complementary protein sources, that type of thing. And so suddenly people are like, whoa, 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 I'm already paying attention, or doing these 7 new habits. Now you want me to do another 6 new habits also. It becomes a little bit more overwhelming. And for most people that are not 100% invested into veganism or their diet, it might just be that extra hurdle. So again, as I mentioned, another con could be gut health, and that's not just in terms of a customization or getting used to it. Some people truly do not do that well with a ton of fiber. Yes, you can get yourself used to, but particularly if you have things like irritable bowel syndrome, or leaky gut syndrome, or things like that, you may actually do better with quote unquote only 10 to 15 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories consumed, as opposed to trying to push the envelope and getting more and more and more and more. And then add to that, if you have intolerances towards FODMAPs, towards a larger quantity of cruciferous vegetables, or towards beans. Like, what are you going to eat on a vegan diet if you're intolerant to beans? Because we've got soybeans, we've got or other legumes like peas and so on. So many of the protein powders are a nice blend of various sources. So if you have intolerances, being plant-based vegan could be quite difficult. Once again, you're just narrowing your window, and at some point it's like, hey, I've got these five foods that I can eat and not that much more. This is no fun. Then I wanted to talk about the processed vegan foods. And so while tofu, seitan, which is also technically processed, or you've got the vegan yogurt and so on, sometimes the processing can actually be a good thing, or it can make them more digestible in that sense. Because let's imagine your tofu beforehand was like a pile of soybeans, and that in your stomach, and now your gut has even more to break down, might just make it even harder. So if you're transitioning into a plant-based vegan diet and you have gut issues anyway, I would actually say lean more towards those already kind of processed things. What I don't want, of course, is just that all of your foods now suddenly have an ingredient list of 30 things and additives, and this is GMO, and here we've got these chemicals, and blah 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 blah. The one of the biggest cons, in my opinion, to being plant-based vegan or vegan in general, is that it is harder to eat out and to adhere to proper macros. So for example, hitting your protein, even if you find a restaurant that serves seitan or tofu and so on, oftentimes the meal is still a lot higher in carbs and fats and lower in protein than an omnivorous meal would be. And therefore, if you're in a dieting phase, if you're struggling to reach your protein powder anyway, it's just harder. Like most vegan meals are going to have more nut butters and just carbs, because of even tofu contains or has some carbs and some fats in it. It's not a pure protein source like a chicken breast or egg whites. So a lot harder. And then we get, even if you just eat out once or twice a week, okay, that might be somewhat easy to plan for. But if you're someone like me who travels a lot or who eats out for work dinners or just in general um, likes to be a little bit more flexible from time to time, it is harder. Like when I go out to eat, I know I almost always find something that contains chicken or fish, and I have a set protein source there. But for a vegan person, on a menu, sometimes the only thing that they can eat might just be fries. And then you have something deep fried with not such great quality oils and no protein in there. So that is really, in my opinion, the second biggest issue aside from the protein. And then the other thing that I mentioned earlier is that if we're not paying attention to micronutrient content or to micronutrient covering our entire micronutrients, we might become low in calcium, low in vitamin B, low in iron. So those are just things that you need to be mindful of. And if you don't purposefully or consciously include things like nutritional yeast, like an iron supplement potentially, like other calcium sources, then you might not notice that you're becoming deficient until it's a little bit too late and you're 6 months, a year, or whatever into your vegan diet, and suddenly you're feeling super lethargic, your hair is becoming thinner, your nails are brittle, and other things like the calcium in particular, that's not going to show for another 10 to 20 years or longer. So that's really something that we want to pay attention to. So in my opinion, those would be the big three things: harder to get protein and harder to eat out and just be adherent long term, and potentially some micronutrient deficiencies if we don't pay attention to that. But okay, so let's go back to the original question of, is going vegan healthier? Well, healthier than what? When I was home over the summer in Germany, my dad actually said to me, "Oh, hey, Lisa, they're actually just running a new study. I read about this in the newspaper where they're going to compare 8 weeks of a vegan diet to 8 weeks of a normal diet." And I was like, well, Dad, there's at least one study arm missing here, because if we're looking at the normal diet, a normal Western diet is crap. A normal Western diet is high in processed things, is lacking in micronutrients as well, is high in saturated fats and trans fats, is high in carbohydrates and low in protein also. So what we would really have to compare here would be 4 different things. We would have to compare a crappy vegan diet, a plant-based whole foods, great quality vegan diet, a great quality whole foods omnivorous diet, and then the standard American or Western diet. So in my opinion, that would be actually an awesome study arm or a study design. And then seeing, okay, over the course of the year, the time, not just 4 weeks, not just 1 week, or not just even a couple of days where we're comparing some blood markers, but where we're actually looking at some longer term effects here. And then that would be the question, like, what is healthier? And I truly believe that the two things, that a plant-based whole foods vegan diet that covers all the micronutrients can be just as, or perhaps healthier, or perhaps a little bit inferior to the omnivorous whole foods plant-based whole foods omnivorous diet. We don't have to argue that a great vegan diet is very likely better than a poor standard American or standard Western diet. We also probably don't have to argue that a very poor vegan diet is inferior to a whole foods omnivorous diet. So I think the two that we're really comparing here are the ones that are whole foods based, that include minimally processed things, so to speak, and that cover all the micronutrients, that are equating for protein, that are equating for calories overall, so that we're not getting into that high calorie toxicity, so to speak. So yes, I believe that we can achieve a great physique and great health on both of those diets. I do believe that one requires more planning, more sort of macro Tetris, etc., than the other. But of course, if that is something that is worth it to you for ethical reasons, for conscious reasons, then by all means, a whole foods, plant-based vegan diet can be a great option for you. I also think many people in the aesthetic space, in the bikini or in the physique space, in terms of bodybuilding, etc., have proven that you can, in fact, achieve wonderful physiques on a plant-based vegan diet, as long as you are looking at your protein intake, your micronutrient intake, your meal timing, your meal frequency. Again, I would caution that perhaps things might be harder to digest or so, and especially also as you get towards the lower end of a calorie deficit, I imagine a plant-based vegan diet to be quite tricky. Let's just assume someone is on 1,300 calories, a small petite female, and she's supposed to eat 130 grams of protein. That means in most cases, for someone who's omnivorous, you can eat a lot of chicken breast and egg whites and maybe a protein shake, but anything that needs to be actually digested by the body is probably going to keep you satiated for longer. Whereas on a vegan diet, you might just have to have seitan, protein powders, and then really being diligent with, okay, not overdoing it with the carbs, because even if you have tofu, or even if you have a lot of beans and so on, you're going to easily exceed your carb requirements for the day if you are on such a low calorie diet. So yes, I think plant-based can be a good in some cases. However, omnivorous can be good as well, and we can cover a lot of health markers. We can have great cholesterol levels. We can have great fiber intake. We can get a lot of micronutrients in. So I would not necessarily say one is superior than the other, but what I will say is that whatever you can stick with is going to be the best. Because if you go on a vegan diet and you can't stick with it because it's limiting you so much when you're eating out, when you are when you are wanting to travel, when you're invited to a birthday dinner or whatever, and you just feel deprived and it's no longer fun for you, then I would say, why are you inflicting, or why are you putting this label onto you that I have to be vegan, or I'm not a good person if I'm not vegan, or just, if you are very conscious about animals and so on, I would say sourcing the animal products that you consume properly, like from a known source or butcher, or maybe you even know someone who hunts, or maybe you want to order something online where you know where it's literally from, where you have a better conscious about how this animal lived and how this animal died. Or maybe you have your own chickens where you truly know how you treated them. I used to have chickens and it was great. Those eggs were probably some of the best eggs I have ever eaten, just in the sense of like how you feel like you connect with the animals. But yes, I mean, that's everybody's personal choice. So to wrap it up, or to, I guess, summarize it once again, you can be healthy or lean on a plant-based vegan diet, but also on a plant-based omnivorous diet. You can also be unhealthy on a vegan diet, and you can also be unhealthy or fat on an omnivorous diet, obviously. So it all depends. Just make sure you get your protein in, you pay attention to fiber on both of these diets. You know what works for you in terms of adherence. You cover your micronutrients. You know how to deal with your gut health the best way. And just in general, getting your bloods taken regularly, I believe, is a really good method in order to avoid micronutrient deficiencies on either diet. So yeah, hopefully you found this helpful. Please let me know in the comments if you have experiences with a vegan diet or what your take is on it. Also, you should probably consider like what kind of supplements should I take in either case. I'm omnivorous and I still take quite a few supplements to make my diet even more optimal and to prevent any kind of potential deficiencies. Don't forget to subscribe, to leave me any comments that you would like. Next week, I'm going to be talking about why can't I seem to resist sugar cravings in the evening? Is this a sign that I lack self-control? I was asked this by a client last week, and I just thought it was a brilliant question. And I'm sure she's not the only one who has thought that or who has asked herself that. And yeah, I certainly have considered that before also. So thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate your time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.